Let's please welcome and join hands in encouraging Mr. Sanjay Anandaram to start his session. Thank you.
The need for an entrepreneurial mindset, what is it? How do we get it moving, and how does it ensure that we move with it? And this is very important because in a country like ours, where about 14 to 15 million of us enter the job market every year. And entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship is the only vehicle that creates jobs, creates wealth, and changes societies and countries, right? So it's got a purpose more than what an individual can do. And that's important for all of us, whether it's politics, it's society, it's culture, it's economics. You take any domain, the entrepreneurial mindset is what makes all of this happen, right? How much time do we have now? I know I'm between you and dinner, and about 40 minutes? Great. So I'll try and wrap this up in about 30 minutes. Keep the balance 10 odd minutes for interaction. Normally, when I take a class on this topic, it typically runs for anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, okay? So anyways, I will not bore you with all of it, but let's get started, all right? And all of this has come about from talking, meeting, listening, experiencing, being involved with entrepreneurship now for close to 27 years, okay? So let's move on. So the entrepreneurial mindset, right? All of you, those of you who are entrepreneurs, those who aren't, and those of you who are contemplating entrepreneurship, one of the standard responses when you talk to anybody, why aren't you an entrepreneur? Why aren't you doing anything? Almost always you will get any one of these responses. I don't have any networks, I don't have any ideas, I don't have money, I don't know what the heck to do, I better just keep doing what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. So, no, right? So this is a very common response you will find everywhere, not just peculiar to India. Anywhere in the world, how can I do it, right? And it's a very interesting thing, just hold this thought. So, it's all about constraints, right? I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have this, I don't have that, therefore I cannot do anything, right? So what has happened, this is called constraint-based thinking. Even before you start, you have put all the world's constraints on yourself, and therefore you cannot start. However, an entrepreneur operates not on constraints, but on possibilities, right? It's very important for us to understand what this means. Is it possible to have a talking mouse? Is it possible to sit on a beam of light and travel? Is it possible to get Purna Swaraj in India? Lahore, 1920. Nobody knew what the heck independence meant. Nobody knew how the hell you're going to get it. But what do you do? We want Purna Swaraj. It's possible, therefore it's doable. You understand? It's very important to understand this. If it is possible, it is doable. And the constraint is in our heads. Nobody has told us that you can't get independence. Nobody has said you can't start a company. We have told ourselves I cannot do it because of all the constraints that we have imposed on ourselves, even before we have started, right? And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through some examples of all kinds of people who all of you would have heard of, and how they have transformed not just themselves, their immediate neighborhoods, not just their countries, but the world at large, okay? Just to give you perspective on what does it mean to be an entrepreneur. Most people who turn to entrepreneurship do it out of either necessity, particularly in poor countries like ours, right? The chap selling something on the road on the gadi, he's an entrepreneur, but that's entrepreneurship out of necessity. There is no choice, he does not know anything else to do. Therefore, I will make dosa on the gadi and I will sell, right? Then you have entrepreneurship of choice. Increasingly, more and more people were getting exposed to the world outside, have some education, are able to travel, whether it is from Mysuru to Bengaluru, Bengaluru to Mumbai, Mumbai overseas, wherever, doesn't matter, right? All of these are entrepreneurs out of choice. You can be an entrepreneur as an income substitution business. I work for a company, I make 25 lakhs a year. That's my income. I stop working for the company, I start my own consulting company, and I make 25 lakhs a year. That is also entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship that is income substitution. You have another kind of entrepreneurship, which is what we are interested in for transformational purposes, that is called entrepreneurship for wealth creation, where instead of making 25 lakhs, you go for 25 crores. Is it possible? Of course it is. If it is possible, it is doable, right? So, jab man mein hai vishwas, baki sab bakwas, right? So, it's a very important thing, and all of this you will find comes from within. The antah prerana is entrepreneur, okay? So, you have to understand these things, very important. So, do you know who this guy is? Died at the age of 38 in 1924. One of the greatest mountaineers of all time. His name is George Leigh Mallory. He tried to climb Everest 3 times, 1921, 1922, 1924. Failed all 3 times. Last attempt, he died. He was 800 meters away from the peak. He slipped, trying to save his partner. The ice axe he was carrying bounced off the rock and hit him on the head. His body was found after almost 70 years, frozen, mummified in the Himalayas. He's such an inspiration to everybody today, because when he was asked, why the hell are you doing all this? His most famous answer was, because it is there. Therefore, it has to be conquered. That is the human spirit, right? And very, very important, because unless you learn to conquer yourself, that is all your doubts and constraints, you will never be able to vanquish anyone outside. You can't enter anything being defeated within. Are you with me? So, what is the important takeaway from this? And this is a very crucial thing. Humankind, we are human beings, we have made progress over millennia only because we have asked the question, what is out there? Early humans stayed in the cave, afraid, wild animals, bad weather, nothing to eat. But somebody went out and said, let me cross the forest and find what is on the other side. Let me cross the river and see what is there on the other side. What is out there in the stars? What is out there inside the water? That is what makes us human. The power of curiosity, the power of wanting to know, the power of conquering the hurdles that are in your way. Don't ever lose that, because then you're not human anymore. We are like any other animal that eats and sleeps and procreates, and that's it. This is what we have. We have to use this, and because we have this, we can learn to imagine. And unless you imagine, unless you want to seek, you cannot do anything else in life. You are an automaton, right? And all of these are the lessons that you learn from people like this. Absolute legend. 38 years old when he died. Do you know who this guy is? Looks like Ranbir Kapoor, but he's not. He's received 59 nominations for Oscars, won 22 Oscars, the largest number by any individual. His name is Walt Disney, right? Walt Disney is this guy. If you can dream, you can do it. That's it. Whoever imagined a talking mouse? Before that, he had a talking rabbit called Oswald, right? He invented, in a way of speaking, cell animation. Until then, it was stop motion. He actually hand drew everything. 2 of his businesses went bankrupt. One business, he was cheated. He bounced back and said, no, this is what I want to do. Okay? And look at what he's saying. If you're curious, you will find interesting, cool things to do. Are you curious? Ask yourself the question. The way to get started, stop talking, get doing. Nike, just do it. Impossible is nothing. Impossible is here. Adidas, right? So think about these things. These are critical, and by people who have walked the talk and made things happen. Okay? He died at the age of 65. He had opened the Disney theme park. He was imagining a world of tomorrow. Those of you who've been to Florida would have seen the Epcot Center in Disney World in Florida. You know what Epcot stands for? Experimental Prototype of the Community of Tomorrow, EPCOT. He was imagining what the world can be. Let me create it. Right? Power of the mind, power of imagination. And because I can imagine, I'm so excited, I'll go out there and convince everybody to make things happen. The same kind of thinking you will see in Steve Jobs, the reality distortion field. That's what he called it. You have to believe it so much that you're actually seeing it in front of you. This is the world that can happen, right? No constraints. Do you know who this guy is? He became an entrepreneur at the age of 53. So all of us who are brought up on stories saying, you know, unless you're 19 and you've dropped out of college, you can't be an entrepreneur. Total BS. Most entrepreneurs are around 35 plus, especially the successful ones. Do you know who he is? Have you watched a film called The Founder? Right? Who is he? He's not McDonald's. He's Ray Kroc, who created McDonald's, the franchise. He didn't even start McDonald's. McDonald's was started by two brothers. He was a ice cream making machine salesman. So he was to go around the country selling ice cream making machines. He comes to the McDonald's in San Bernardino in California, and he sells them the ice cream making machine. And then there's bad news, the economy tanks. His sales drop, he's not able to sell anymore. But he finds that only these guys have bought 8 machines. So he goes and meets them. So they have 8 McDonald's outlets based out of San Bernardino. He sees it and he's totally impressed. Why? Because they have made the making of a hamburger a science. Every single step is a process, well documented, quantities are measured, everybody is trained, the stores are kept clean, the stores are well lit so that undesirable characters don't come, it was family friendly, etc., etc. And he was unbelievably taken aback by this. So he joins them as their sales head. He quits his ice cream making machine, joins them as their sales head to go and sell the concept of McDonald's around the country. He has convinced the owners that you have to franchise. They don't understand franchising. They say, no, we are quite happy. We are making good money with our 8 shops. Who the hell wants to franchise? A big headache. He says, I will do it for you. They say, okay, go and do it for us. And then he starts. And today, I don't know if you know, the largest private sector landowner in the US is McDonald's. Do you know that? It was his innovation. His innovation was each franchisee will get only one outlet, no master franchisee, right? And therefore, you tie in financing, everything else, and that's how you start, right? That was the innovation. The founders said, no, you shouldn't do this. So he bought them out, okay? He paid $1 million and bought them. Rest is history, as they say, okay? But the point I'm making is, he was joined as an employee, but he was able to see potential, the possibility. And if it is possible, it is doable. Therefore, I have to be innovative in my business model. I cannot keep owning each and every outlet. Let me expand, let me get distribution by franchising. Somebody else's money, my brand, my process, my technology, I will train you. Today outside Chicago, you will find a University of Hamburgerology. You know that? There's a McDonald's University that gives you a degree in hamburgerology. Every detail is laid out. And he conducted time and motion studies. How much time, if you, and therefore in a McDonald's, I think in 90 seconds or something, if you don't get your burger, it's free. So how do you get your process right? How do you source your potatoes right? Right? Unbelievable attention to detail. That is what makes things great. Why? Because he believed in it. He wanted, he said, unless this happens, I cannot scale. Right? So again, if it's possible, it's doable. And this is one of his very famous lines. Right? The harder I work, the luckier I get. And there's another old saying, you know, what is luck? Luck is what happens when hard work meets opportunity. That's all. And then you can call it with whatever name. Who's this guy? All of you, I'm sure, have heard the name and may have had or consumed the product that his company makes. Do you know? You heard of Starbucks? Howard Schultz. Okay? Comes from a very poor family. The first person in his family to go to college. Okay? And he joined as a salesperson as well. He joined Starbucks as a salesperson. And what was Starbucks doing then? They were selling coffee powder and coffee beans. So he was selling coffee powder and coffee beans. Then he goes to Italy, to Milan, which is the coffee capital of Italy and therefore by extension of Europe. And he sees that the coffee culture is fantastic. Everybody sits there on the side, on the footpath, enjoying coffee and watching the world go by. And he said, man, this is a fantastic life. I want to bring this into the US. So he comes back and he talks to the owners and he says, why are we just selling this? We should sell an experience. We should sell a lifestyle, not coffee, the lifestyle of coffee. So they don't understand all this. They say, no, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. So he says, I know what I'm talking about. He raises money, buys them out. Okay? They go and start something called Pete's Coffee. Those of you who've gone to California, you'll still see Pete's Coffee there. Meanwhile, this guy has started another coffee shop called Il Giornale, which is the name of the newspaper in Milan, in Italy. He merges Il Giornale with Starbucks and calls the whole thing Starbucks. Right? And then he's selling. So today, when you walk into a Starbucks, you're not buying coffee. You're buying a Starbucks experience. Unbelievably, crazily priced coffee. $7, $8 you'll pay for a frappe, makke, whatever, but you'll feel cool about it. Right? That is the experience. Right? And that is the magic that you're able to provide. And now there are so many Starbucks everywhere that it's become a lifestyle. Oh, let's meet at a Starbucks. Not because I'm dying to have coffee, but it's a place I'm comfortable in. Right? Very important. Now see what he says. Again, the same idea about luck. Right? And it's very important for you to understand this. Right? You see things that others don't. That is what vision is. If everyone sees the same thing, how are you different? Okay? And don't worry, the point I think that Ajit also made, SDM, same thing, shit happens. Deal with it. Move on. But keep coming back. Do other things, right? Fabulous. You know who these guys are? Beatles, everyone knows that, right? 4 very distinct personalities, the greatest selling pop group of all time. Even today, they disbanded in 1970, 52 years since their last album. They make $670 million a year in royalties. You know that? That's the power. And there are 4 people who came together, young kids from 1961 to 1969. That's it. That's all that they did. Very different personalities. But how did you all work together? We are 4 parts of one. What does that mean? Teamwork. You cannot build anything by yourself. You cannot. You need a team. And in a team, everyone must complement each other, must gel. There's an old saying in the VC business, if the chemistry is not right, the arithmetic will never work. Okay? Important to understand that. It doesn't matter. End of the day, if you and I agree, that's all that matters. Business is not done between spreadsheets. Business is done between people, which means I must trust you. I must feel comfortable with you. I must want to help you, right? And all of us here who are involved with the entrepreneur ecosystem, for us that's important because we are all giving back, right? Why are you here as part of TiE? This is perhaps the only organization where you pay money to help somebody. It's kind of weird, right? Because you want to give back. You want to see all this evolve. You want to see a better future. That is why you're part of it. It gives you a kick to see somebody else succeed and you being a part of it, right? Very important. And these are things that you have to be able to deeply internalize, okay? Who's this guy? Very great man. Dr. Kurian, exactly. Do you know who Dr. Kurian is? I think the youngsters will not know. Unbelievably great man. India was a milk deficient country. Thanks to him, we are a milk surplus country. Not just a milk surplus country, we are the world's largest producer of milk. Can you imagine the innovation? His mentor was a guy called Tribhuvan Das Patel, another legend. He has a degree in physics. He studied in Bengaluru, National Dairy Research Institute. Went to Michigan for his master's. He went there on a scholarship to study dairy engineering. He said, who's interested in dairy engineering? So you know what he studied? Mechanical engineering and nuclear physics. Came back, and then because he had so-called dairy engineering, and his uncles were senior people in Nehru's government, he said, okay, go to Anand, Gujarat, Tribhuvan Das Patel, and figure out something in dairy because he needs some help. So he goes there, right? And then he understands what it means. An unbelievable innovation. Can you imagine collecting milk from millions of farmers? There is no cold storage, there is no cold chain. How do you collect it? How do you determine the quality of milk? How do you make payments? There is no Google Pay. How do you pay? How do you keep records? 50% or more are illiterate. How do you do it? He innovated to make skim milk. He innovated to make condensed milk. Do you know how? In India, the #1 milk in India is not cow milk, it is buffalo milk. There was no technology in the world that allowed you to make condensed milk and skim milk from buffalo milk. His colleague from Michigan, another Indian guy, Gujarati, Dhaliwal, I think his name was, he and Varghese Kurian innovated and built the machines. When they went to Denmark, one of the large dairy producing countries, they told him, forget it, you guys can't do it. And we don't want to waste our technology on you guys. So he came back really charged. I'll show you guys. And he did it. Right? New Zealand, Europe were dumping milk and butter and everything onto India. He said, stop it. 1962 war with China, #1 supplier to the Indian army. Okay? He wanted managerial skills. There was no managerial capability. He set up IRMA. You may have heard of it, Institute of Rural Management in Anand. He is the founder. Okay? And just imagine, we are talking now of the 1940s. Today, Amul is a $5 billion company, cooperative, 5 million plus farmers are benefited. It is challenging all the multinationals. It's into ice creams and obviously, butter and cheese and everything else. Nandini Milk in Karnataka, second largest milk producer in India, inspired by Amul, right? Operation Flood. And just see the impact it is having, right? That is what I mean by societal transformation. It is not just something I will do and I'm happy, doing my thing. It's changing lives across. And that is a fundamental thing, right? It's all about this. It's all in your head. It talks of will. Will is here. You want to do it, right? Look for the kink in the thing. Be curious. A healthy irreverence. Just because somebody says, hige agodu, doesn't mean it is hige agodu. Right? Why not? That is what an entrepreneur asks. Can it be better, faster, cheaper? Why can't I change the status quo? Why should it be like this? Why should I fill up 45 forms just to open a bank account? Why? Unless you ask that question, you are not going to think like an entrepreneur. Okay? You know who this guy is? Who? Elon Musk. You know the interesting thing about him, he's an African American. Do you know that? He's South African. Another interesting thing about Elon Musk, he has Asperger's syndrome. You know what that is? You've heard of autism? Asperger's is on the same continuum. Zero social, emotional interaction capability. Zero. So he's worked at it. Okay? Studied economics, taught himself programming, has started some 8 companies, insanely successful, joined Stanford University to do a degree in philosophy, second day quit, so this is not for me, I can do better things, right? So everything from Tesla to SpaceX to Boring Company to Hyperloop to PayPal to whatever, is the guy, okay? And very, very important, see the point he makes. I think it's possible for ordinary folks to become extraordinary. And how do you become extraordinary? This. Be curious, ask the questions, SDM, right? And just go for it. I don't need to say who this is. But what his comment that really moves me even today, okay, is what's there on the top right, is not very clear. He says, I don't want to be known as the richest guy in the cemetery. I made my first million when I was 21. I made 10 million when I was 24. I made 100 million when I was 27. But I don't want to be known as the richest guy in the cemetery. I want to be known as the guy who changed the world. You understand? That is the drive. The drive is not to make money. Money is the byproduct of his thing. He's an adopted child, you know that? Right? And went through enormous hardships. But always asking the question, why not? Why should computer interfaces be so lousy? And he was attention to detail. When he's making a presentation, typically when he's the night before, massive practice and rehearsals are going on. They're launching the Macintosh, which I don't know if you know, in 1984, they launched with an advertisement for the Macintosh. There was just one ad, shown only once, the most expensive ad ever made until that time. It cost $1 million to make, and it was shown just once at a Super Bowl event, which is the most watched thing in America. And that was the launch of the Apple Macintosh.
where it takes on a giant company called IBM.
Product is launched, he observes that on the screen, two colors on the pixels on the screen are not rendering right. He stops it, calls all the engineers back. You work through the night, it has to be up tomorrow morning 9 a.m., period, no discussion. Attention to detail. Slave driver for perfection, right? What does it mean? Unbelievable passion. Why should it be so bad? Right? You look at every single Apple product. Design is the intellectual property. They haven't invented anything. I don't know if you know that. Apple has not invented anything. But their ability to put everything together in such a cool way that you see it, you just want to have it. Right? And that is the magic of Steve Jobs. And every single quote of his, if today was the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? Just ask yourself the same questions, right? And that is what should move us into doing things, into imagining possibilities, not to be bowed down by constraints. Who's this guy? Bill Gates, right? Exact polar opposite of Steve Jobs, but insanely successful, okay? Driven. When they were giving a demo to IBM, he didn't have a bath for 5 days, worked 20 hours a day, didn't sleep. And IBM, all suited, booted, came into the room. This guy, young kid, smelling like mad, right? And he sold them the greatest sales job ever done in computer history. You know what? He sold them the software and charged a royalty for it. Because nobody believed that the PC, the personal computer, will take off. He said, and they didn't, and they had an operating system called MS-DOS. That was also not made by them. It was made by another company. He purchased it for $50,000, rewrote it, changed the name, and sold it to IBM, charged a royalty for every single machine sold. IBM went down the tube, these guys took off like a rocket, okay? And phenomenal. And that's such an insightful thing. Your most unhappy customers are the ones you learn the most from, right? You learn from only your failures. You never learn from your success, never. What made you successful? I don't know. But why did you fail? You understand, always in life. So your most unhappy customers are the ones who will give you the honest feedback. Why aren't you buying from me? Because your product sucks. Why does it suck? And you get into an iterative Q&A with your customer. Is it hard to use? Why is it hard to use? No, because the screen is here, that is there, this is there. Why is it there? How do you use it, right? And ultimately, you will get to the question of why is it a hated product? That's why you observe in good restaurants, what does the chef do? He'll come and ask you, right? Ask yourself, how many times have you spoken to your customers? How many times have academics gone and spoken to students? How do you find this class? What is lousy about the class? What do you like? What don't you like? So I call it the if so, why so, if not, why not Q&A. Always you should ask. You like it? Yes. Why do you like it? You don't like it? Okay. Why don't you like it? Keep on asking. Ultimately, you will come to the lowest common set, right, of reasons why the product or service or whatever is loved by somebody. Otherwise, you will never know. You know who this is? Sridhar Bamboo. You know who Sridhar Bamboo is? He's the founder of Zoho, right? He has never taken money from anybody outside, entirely self-funded, built it grounds up, okay? So very, very important. And the second paragraph is the most critical, particularly in today's day and age, when there's so much money floating around. The most seductive mistress is money, is finance. Don't get taken in by that. Okay? Focus on your business. Focus on your customers. Never obsess about your competition. Never. Obsess about your customer. Don't worry about valuation. Worry about creating value for your customer. Right? Very simple, but only when you get deep into it, it's important. Leave money on the table. How many of us have gone for a negotiation and was squeezing and was squeezing and squeezing the other guy? No, no, 25 paisa more. No, no, 50 paisa more. No, no. All of us have been there. Can you imagine what is happening in the other person's head? What kind of a guy is this guy? Right? And we do that with everybody. With our vendors, we screw the heck out of them and say no. Now, is that guy happy with you? No. First opportunity, he will leave. So you only build a business when you have a win-win partnership. The other person must feel like working with you. Business is done between people, not between spreadsheets. You understand? Very, very important to internalize these things. Only if the other person makes money are they going to work with you. You're not going to die if that person makes 5-10% more, right? You want your suppliers to be happy and service you. Do you know who this person is? Yeah. Mohandas Gandhi. At the age of 48, he comes to India. I don't know if you know that. He was an NRI. Never really worked in India. He was always used to be dressed in a suit, Savile Row suits, stitched in London. He comes to India, invited by the Congress, and then he says, you know what, this is not going to work. I have to know India. So, changes, gets into his dhoti and starts walking. Now imagine, and this is to me the most awesome thing, before social media, how did a person get his message across to millions of people with that intensity? Just imagine, no? One guy, correct? How was it possible? Because the person was the message. The message was the power. So this is just outstanding. You can agree with him, you can disagree with him, but you cannot disrespect him. When he says something, that is what it is. Okay? And simply lived the life that he espoused. Sarojini Naidu said, Gandhiji, it costs so much to make you travel in third class. Right? He used to get the hospitality of the Birlas. In fact, he died at the Birla house. That's where he was shot, 31st January 1948. What was the logic? Everybody must be part of this effort. It doesn't matter, because it's a mission. And in a mission, it cannot be 2.5 people doing something. The same point that Ajit made and others made, we are in this together. You are all together, only then is this a success. It's not going to happen with any one person, one organization, one geography, nothing. And how do you energize millions of people? With a sense of purpose. Why are you here? Because we want to help entrepreneurs. That's the purpose. Not because I want to become rich, I want to buy another car, I want another house, I want to buy another 60/40, right? That's not the motivation. So the higher order motivation is what gives you that momentum. And that is critical. You understand? I mean, and symbolic gestures. Salt March caught the imagination of the world. See how smart that idea was. Simple thing like salt, everybody needs it. Salt tax imposed, use it. And obviously you've heard all of these lines before, right? You must be the change you wish to see in the world. Do you know what this is? This is a simply mind-boggling story. Mind-boggling, literally. This lady is receiving the Padma Shri from President Kovind. Her name is Subhashini Mystery. She runs a hospital called Humanity Hospital. So those of us who say, how can I be an entrepreneur? I don't have anything, no education, no money, no networks, no this, no that, no idea. What the heck can I do? Listen to her story and then ask yourself, you should be ashamed after hearing the story. She got married at the age of 12, became a widow at the age of 23, had 4 children. Her husband died because there was no hospital in the village. He could not get health care. Her elder son was given away to foster parents, went to study medicine on government support. She worked as a maid, as a dishwasher, as a vegetable seller for 23 years and collected 1 lakh of rupees. Just imagine, just for a moment let the words sink in. What did she do with that 1 lakh? She went back to her village where her husband died, bought land and set up a kacha hospital, clinic, not a hospital. Meanwhile, her son had become a doctor, came there to practice. Then she petitioned the local MLA, Gram Panchayat, Zilla Parishad people, raised some money. Today, she has 2 Pakka hospitals, servicing more than 100 beds. Right? She's still illiterate. Her daughter-in-law takes care of the nursing. She's in charge of overall talking to patients. Her son is this thing. The other kids are working there. Now you tell me, is this an entrepreneurial story or not? Right? Everything you can imagine is there. There is drive, there is passion, there is hard work, there is persuasion, convincing others to part with money so that you can do this. Right? Every single thing. And the biggest SDM is this. So now you ask yourself, if she can do it, what is holding me back? This. Right? So this is what is holding us back. So how can all this fine? We hear these stories every day, yeah, YouTube videos we've seen, enough of the gas, time for dinner. But how can I do all this? Fair question. How can I do this? You can only do this if you do this. From the Brihadaranyaka Upanishads, you are what your deep driving desire is. As is your desire, so is your will. As is your will, so is your action. As is your action, so is your destiny. In other words, if you don't have the deep driving desire, nothing is going to happen. Do you want to change the world? Steve Jobs asks John Scully, 1985. John Scully is the president of Pepsi Cola. Steve Jobs, 26 years old, and goes to him and says, I want you to join my company and be the president. John Scully says, what are you joking? A tiny little startup, I'm the king of Pepsi. Steve Jobs tells him, do you want to sell sugared water the rest of your life, or do you want to change the world? John Scully could not sleep that night. It's there in his book. He quits and joins Apple. That is the power of mission. That is the power of persuasion. That's the power of the entrepreneurial mindset. Okay? Thank you.